Greetings, fellow Storm Riders. It's official, like it or not, you've just joined us. And we have only one question for your unconscious minds.
Whatever happened to that old tranquility we used to know?
These are days of victory!
Here we go!
Oh, Mike, here we are.
Thanks,
back
Chris.
with another podcast. Welcome to podcast episode 100 minus 12. That makes it episode 88. And this is Brain Software with Mike Mandel, and I'm Chris Thompson. So help me welcome the living hypnoticon himself, a man who deeply cares about his potassium intake, a man who was the relationship coach on CBC Television's Stephen and Chris show for 2 seasons.
Yes, I was.
And a man who is actually retiring from the stage.
Retiring. Yes, I am. It's not a joke.
Mike Mandel.
Thank you, Christopher.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Man, well, let me just quickly say about the retirement. That is a real deal. As you know, I just did Western University for the 43rd year in a row.
That's right.
And told them, I said, this is the last university or college show I will ever do. And they were
talking
great.
specifically about stage hypnosis.
Right, stage
here.
hypnosis. And they were chanting, "We love Mike, we love Mike." 6,000 kids. It was fantastic.
It's pretty amazing.
This Saturday, Chris, I will be doing my final corporate show in Toronto.
Again, talking about stage hypnosis.
Stage hypnosis. I'm retiring from the stage. And then in March, I will do my final show ever. So I've only got 2 hypnosis shows to go. March will be in Oshawa, Ontario, and we're hoping to pack it up. We'll tell people.
We'll be talking a lot more about that.
This enables me to put after 5,000 shows, to put my mind and my considerably, whatever I'm going with that, I'm at my age losing the thread.
You're
what I want to do is put my attention
on teaching.
I want to focus on the stuff you and I do. The online stuff, the teaching, that's where my heart is. So I'm not retiring from that. It is selective.
All right. So today in this episode, we actually have a really awesome show, and it's all about relationships. But before we go there, we have to mention a few quick things. The first is that we have created something we have been dying to do for a long time. We designed a really cool shirt. Actually, we've got t-shirts and hoodies that promote the Brain Software podcast. So if you are a fan of this podcast,
and who isn't,
of the Chris and Jeff show, as we love it, call it, Riders on the Storm, then you will want to head on over to MikeMandelHypnosis.com/shirt. Lowercase or uppercase shouldn't matter. MikeMandelHypnosis.com/shirt. And what you'll discover is you can see this awesome t-shirt design, or when you pick up,
or you can get a hoodie.
Yeah, or a hoodie. And when you buy the shirt it's actually on teespring.com. The campaign
quality is fantastic.
Via Teespring, so we don't have to do all the mailing of the shirts and stuff. But if you buy a shirt, and they're very reasonably priced, we are giving away a ton of bonus training worth about $100. So check out all the details there. The campaign ends, because all the shirts go to print as of the end date, on October 13th. So you have between now and October 13th, 2017 to go to MikeMandelHypnosis.com/shirt. Buy whatever shirt you want. You send us your proof of payment, as tons of people have been doing, and I hook you up with awesome training. It's like
absolutely free.
It's like Christmas morning for me. I feel like I'm Santa Claus.
Yeah.
I'm giving away.
We give away a ton of
free stuff. And I'm going out of my way to make sure, I don't know if I've told you this yet, Mike, but because we have this default mystery digital bundle that we're giving to people, I haven't told them what it is. Right. But I know what it is. Yeah. And if I look up their account and I say, oh, well, Jim over here
Jim's already got it.
Already got this, I give him something else. And I make sure.
You are a true Santa Claus,
It's
buddy.
a lot of fun. It's taking up a lot of my time, but that's totally cool.
And let's add one more point, and then we'll get into the meat of the podcast.
Right.
If you are getting one of our Brain Software shirts, which are fantastic, printed front and back.
They look amazing.
They do look amazing. It's a brilliant red, and psychologists report that wearing red makes men and women seem more powerful and attractive. Absolutely true. I just read that recently. Chris, I would like to point out that we are still looking for wonderful people out there to give us a 5-star rating on our podcast. If you enjoy it. We want to maintain that 5-star rating. We've done it for 87 podcasts. So please go to iTunes and put in a comment and give us 5 stars if you like it.
The podcast app on iOS has the ability to leave a review right there. So please do that.
Well, let's go. Let's talk about relationships. And the reason we're talking about them, and we haven't really visited them in any depth for several podcasts, better relationships mean a better life.
They absolutely do. And it's a funny thing that when you study, let's say, relationships whether it be between parents and kids,
but any human
or
interaction
at business meetings, etc., working boss colleague interactions.
Well,
let's try that again. Interactions,
we'll edit
or
that out.
husband, wife, whatever, spousal relationships. They all map across, right? There's these skills. Essentially, it comes down to things like rapport, etc.
Proper communication.
So we're going to mostly be talking about
significant other,
your significant other, your husband, wife type, boyfriend, girlfriend type relationships. But understand that the concepts that you will get will map across into other relationships.
Yes, indeed. And the talking point here I wanted to get to immediately, Chris, is I call this a baker's dozen hacks for your relationships. We're going to get 13 different things you can do to make your relationship better. And a lot of these I shared on CBC television. The results were phenomenal. And the basis of this is a Spanish proverb, which is, the lion thinks all are like him.
Explain.
I will, Chris. You don't need to shout. This isn't the grain elevator. But the thing that's interesting about it is everybody thinks everybody else responds the same way. People who are extremely direct think everybody else should be extremely direct.
Why is she so vague? Why can't she just be more direct? And
likewise, people who are very soft in their communication and non-confrontational, they think everybody... Yes. Yeah. So we have to, first of all, step outside the box that the way we interact with people is the normal way. In reality, it is only the normal way for us.
Exactly. Right. That makes so much sense.
Now, the very first point I had, Chris, is ego states. And any of our regular listeners know we talk about these a lot. We look at the work of Paul Federer, Watkins and Watkins, Gordon Emerson, and the idea that we are all sub-personalities. We are a classroom full of sub-personalities. The classroom model works great. I think it's Emerson's work, where you imagine a classroom with the teacher's chair is vacated. She's out of the room or he's out of the room.
Yeah.
You have a classroom full of kids. Some of them are sitting in the corner not paying attention. Some of them are shouting. They're boisterous. Some are talking to their close friends. Some are solitary. Some haven't spoken in years. And whichever kid is sitting in the teacher's chair, that is the one that's dominating the class and is currently executive.
And you have different kids who are clowns of the class,
take turns being executive. Yes. And likewise with our sub-personalities, one will be executive at any given moment. When you point at yourself, you are pointing at an ego state. And we use about 5 to 15 in our daily life. So recognize, my first thing for you is...
What's your podcasting ego state, by the way?
My podcasting ego state is one that is filled with brilliance, hilarious comedy, and
wit and humor.
Wit, humor, and tremendous sexual vigor for a man of my age.
All right,
so we'll let that out. Now, so recognize that ego states speak differently than each other. They look different. They have different facial expressions. In fact, in extreme cases, you may have one ego state that is nearsighted and one that isn't, or one that is allergic to shrimp and another one, and the rest aren't. I mean, it's that specific. Mm-hmm. These are not imaginary. They are burned in neural pathways in your brain. So, because they all act differently from each other, learn to recognize them in your partner. Recognize when they have changed ego states, because one pops out and another pops in a blink. And you'll see something will set somebody off. A different ego state has just become executive.
Okay, so basically learn about ego states, learn to recognize them in yourself, in your partner. Notice which one is in the executive for you. And that will help
recognize it. Is this ego state that is executive a useful one for this situation? Obviously, I don't want my teaching jiu-jitsu state to be executive when I'm playing with my Egyptian male cat. So start to recognize them. That's step one. And you will then begin to learn which triggers are causing different ego states to become executive when you set people off and so on.
So then if you can learn the right trigger for the right ego state that you want, or the right trigger to bring the ego state that you want in your partner at that moment, then you will have better rapport, etc.
Excellent.
Okay, let's move on to number 2, which is learn to close loops.
What do I mean by that, Chris?
Well, so open loops, how can I say this scientifically? They piss people off.
Well, they do. We'll edit that.
We're keeping this family friendly, so that's as close to swearing as I'm going to get. Open loops are kind of like when, hey, by the way, before we get into that, they're just like
just
that.
Did it. Yeah, they leave things hanging. We like to have, especially men, women out there listening, men like to have loops closed. Women are better with open loops. My wife says that women have brains like spaghetti. Men have brains like boxes. So we like to put things in our little box, hammer it shut, and then we don't want the box open again. So women recognize that men really, everybody to a degree, but men especially need closure. They need closure on different issues. So don't do what my wife does, which is she'll say half a sentence. She'll say, you know, we should get the, and then she'll start looking at something in the newspaper. And I'll say, what? And she'll go,
What do you mean?
I said, what are you talking about? We should get what? She said, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, you just said we should get these. She said, I don't know. That creates what we call a Zeigarnik effect.
Yeah, you can use humor to point this out when it's happening in your relationship.
Yeah.
And
I'm having trouble with that.
The interesting thing is, you taught me this. I can't remember exactly the wording that you used, but when you are aware of something, let's call it a problem, whatever it is, the fact that I tend to open loops, then it's pointed out to you and you only notice it after you've done it.
If it's I tend to open loops but not close
we tend to talk about this when it came to things like filler phrases. So let's say I'd be aware of the fact that I used a filler phrase after the fact.
Could be right.
Then I would become aware of it as I was doing it. Then I would catch myself before I did it. Then I just wouldn't do it anymore.
And then you just didn't do it anymore. So that's great.
So with an open
noticing
loop,
it in yourself, that's really powerful.
And with loops, something I was just noticing through conversations with my wife over the last week, it's pretty funny. There is a right time and a wrong time to bring up a certain topic. Depending on the context.
For example, when a woman has PMS, that's not the time to bring up that she has PMS based on my previous experience.
Pretty much. So that's hilarious.
It's not PMS, it's you!
Let's say you're having a nice romantic evening, maybe not the right time to shift the conversation towards aspects of your business that you want to grow. Let's just say, right?
Context.
So one thing that can happen that I noticed my wife was doing, and it was hilarious, she would be about to bring up something, then catch herself doing it, and then decide not to. And I could calibrate this, and it would annoy the heck out of me. And I'd say to her, an open loop to me is worse than saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. So just close this loop for now, please.
That's a really important one. So learn to close loops, finish subjects, and move on to the next one. Number 3 is learn to listen. I mean, really listen.
What's that?
And and the reason this is important is when you're listening to someone, make it clear you are listening. It's that you shouldn't be texting. You shouldn't be checking.
Put your phone down.
Yeah, put your phone down. You shouldn't be looking at a magazine on the table. Your eyes flicking up to a TV that's in the restaurant. This is a really important one. And for me, as a profound audio, that's my primary sense, I don't feel that I'm listened to if the person is not looking at me, giving me their attention.
Absolutely.
So give them your attention, and you can use my intention technique, which I use to intersect people hypnotically. It works for this as well and was unpacked through clean language work. What you do is when you look at the person, imagine that there are tendrils of light coming out from your body in an arc from your sides and head and interlocking the other person. Like, Dr. Octopus, the Spider-Man villain, he had these octopus things come out. But you make these nice things. They're shimmering light. They interlock with the other person. And as you maintain your attention on what they are saying, your intention keeps this light flowing sharp. And by doing that, it reminds you to really continue to listen.
And when you're speaking to someone, you can start to calibrate whether they truly are listening. It'll actually improve your hypnosis skills.
Very much so, Chris.
I think it's very important. In fact, from my perspective, one of the things that I've learned in talking with you about this is that exact concept. If I'm talking to someone and I notice the lack of eye contact, the
drifting away of attention
over to something else, whatever it is, I'll just stop. Just completely stop, like a pattern interrupt, and wait for the other person to re-engage the conversation.
Oh, that's beautiful. The creative use of silence, like intentional silence. Yeah.
Then topic's over. They weren't interested. I didn't calibrate correctly.
Nice. Yeah.
Makes sense. So
that's good.
Really listen. Another thing that I've noticed, because I work from home, as do you, oftentimes, especially during the nice weather.
Why did you have to say we work from home? I want people to think we have a huge office building we own or something.
Well, we do. Well, okay.
We don't work there.
We do. No, we don't. No, we work from home studio, home everything. When I'm at home working in the summer months, I tend to bring my computer out into the backyard or up to the kitchen or something like that, because I like to spend as much time as I can outside. I don't want to work in a basement office. As nice as it is, I'd rather be in daylight.
Yeah.
So what happens is I will be on maybe on my iPhone or iPad or something like that, checking a text, responding to something, doing business, but the rest of my family doesn't know that I'm doing that.
Okay.
So they see me as available for conversation, available for questions.
And in reality, you're not there at all.
But I had to realize, guess what? Somebody comes up, starts talking to me, whatever it is I'm doing on my iPhone, as I'm pretending to hold an iPhone, put it down. It can wait.
You know, Chris, that's a great one. And I've only just started doing that lately. When my wife comes in and is talking to me, if I'm checking something on my iPhone, whatever, on my iPad, I actually either close the cover or I put my iPhone, I put it face down.
Yes.
And now and then I do the interaction technique, the Dr. Octopus light.
I calibrated you. I knew you were going to do that.
I know, man. That's great. She feels listened to. Give us number 4.
Okay, number 4 is...
we can fly through these because we have a long podcast.
This is something we've talked about on the podcast before, but it's really worth mentioning because, again, all relationships benefit from rapport.
Yes.
So number 4 is rapport through Grinder's method. Grinder being John Grinder, co-founder of neurolinguistic programming. And, do you want me to tell the secret?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, the Grinder method, something that John Grinder told Mike Mandel, which is pretend that the other person is the most fascinating person you have ever
Fascinating
met.
and important.
And important, that's it.
And continue to pretend that.
The entire time you're having the conversation, and you will discover that they are.
Yeah, everybody has something to offer. And when you keep pretending congruently that they are fascinating, that they're important, you will give them the kind of quality attention that will draw them out and build a tremendous rapport bridge between the two of you. So probably enough said on that.
It makes a lot of sense. If my wife comes home and she wants to tell me something about what happened in her yoga class this morning, I'm going to assume this is a fascinating story.
Yes.
And it will.
She's telling you for a reason.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She's not just telling me because she wants me to go buy her a new yoga mat or something.
Right.
She can do that herself.
Yeah, but you shouldn't pattern interrupt it and say something like, "Were there other women there?
Yes, exactly.
Were they wearing yoga pants?
Yes.
Can you describe them to me?" There's limits to that model. It's probably not.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I'm a comic genius.
Okay.
Now, listen.
Number 5.
Number 5 is be specific. When you are communicating, be very specific. Don't talk in verbal fluff. And that's where studying the meta model of NLP is very, very handy, or clean language. Don't expect people to reverse mind read. Reverse mind read. Mind reading is the NLP thing. Thinking you know what someone else is feeling, what their thoughts are, whatever. 6 of diamonds, wrong. You can't just read people's minds. So the alternative is reverse mind reading. Assuming the person knows what you mean when you have not given them the requisite information.
So as an example, people in my wife's family, they seem to miraculously understand each other. And it's a hilarious joke now between my wife and I. But she'll be able to say things to her mom like, well, can you get that thing? Or where's the spatula? Oh, it's what are they'll say, like, it's in the thingy, or it's in the cupboard. Yeah. There's 16 cupboards in the kitchen. Yeah,
they know whichever one it is.
It's in the cupboard. And you're like, which cupboard? I don't know, but they'll understand each other.
Right.
They have this miraculous
Now that's unusual though, because with most people it's the opposite, and it's what is it specifically that's bothering you? Well, if you don't know, I'm not going to tell. That's reverse mind reading, expecting the person to read your mind. Be specific. Let people know.
Okay, so the idea of reverse mind reading is when you should recognize that you have not provided sufficient information.
You must provide it.
Pissed at the other person for not knowing.
Yeah. How could they possibly know? Yeah.
Okay, good point.
So go to, give us number 6 there, Chris.
Learn your partner's triggers. And we're talking specifically here about triggers that trigger negative reactions.
And then stop doing them.
And then don't do them anymore.
Right.
Right.
So we've all encountered that with people. There's some people, one of the people I'm connected with only through marriage, God be eternally praised, so there's no genetic connection to my wife or myself, has borderline personality disorder. And one of the problems with that is they switch ego states really quickly. They're just a little happy state, and then they're screaming, yes, like she's just out of her mind a minute later. The ego states go back and forth because there's no clear communication between them.
Yes.
But we have recognized what some of the triggers are, and we've stopped doing them in her presence. In fact, we've stopped having anything to do with her presence.
Triggers can be visual, auditory, or
because they're anchors. These are anchors.
So a trigger can be a certain touch.
Right. It can be swearing. It can be a racial slur. It can be anything that's going to set that person off. And a trigger, especially with language, is going to be coded in the amygdala of the brain and set off and immediately access an unresourceful state most of the time.
So as 6B, we should insert here find your partner's positive triggers and do more of those.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
So what is it that and those triggers could be relating back to number one, calling a different ego state into the executive.
For sure.
Triggering a certain ego state that you want to be there.
Want to be executive. And Chris, you can even do this on yourself. I know that being highly auditory anchors are very powerful with me. So when I'm on the road, and having been on the road for 43 years, although I'm retiring from the stage, if I haven't told you again, realize that this is going to be something that I would sometimes get just down being on the road by myself, another time in a hotel, another flight. And I've learned to travel with my entire music collection through Apple Music. So I will put on music that triggers really good states with me. I've learned how to craft my environment. Yes. So find your own triggers too. Awesome. Anyway, it's that time, Chris. We now pause for station identification.
From the World Hypnotic Epicenter, Toronto, Canada, you are listening to the Brain Software Podcast, owned and operated by the Shizjig Corporation, a division of Bryce Morgan Enterprises, in concert with the Gus Grissom Random Appearance Orchestra and North American Free Trade Memorial Fund in support of amateur frotaging birthday party clowns seeking professional help from unemployed grain elevator workers. Yes, this is an intervention because you're still just Danny, and Jerry was so right about you.
Woo!
All right, that was fun. So now we are on to number 7, Mike, and we have this gets to Gary Chapman's work. Mm-hmm. So we did a podcast before, can't remember which one. We'll look it up and put it in the show notes, where we discussed Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages.
Great book, really good book.
And so it is an essential book for all married people or in any relationship of any kind really to read. Understand the love language of your partner and then learn to speak it.
Now, what are the 5? Acts of service, doing something for the person.
Right.
Words of affirmation.
Words of affirmation. Quality
time together. Physical touch. And gift giving.
Right. Oh, we got them all.
Right. Now, with me, my love languages are words of affirmation, not surprising. I'm a freaking auditory. Yeah, and physical touch. The same yours are, actually.
Same that mine are, right.
My wife's words, it's none of those things. It's...
Mine is
it's works of service, doing things for her.
And so words of affirmation.
So she has to remember that the works of service don't feed my love language. So, do you love me, honey? Well, of course I love you. I washed your socks.
I clean the kitchen for you. Yeah, I knew you were going to be cooking.
So I'm using verbal things and touch and stuff, and it's not working with her because she wants me to go and dig up the garden or something.
Exactly.
So find out.
Well, no, maybe you're speaking of way in the past, but now, I'll call you and I'll say, hey, Mike, you want to go for dinner before jiu-jitsu class? And you'll say to me something like, well, no, I can't right now because I'm vacuuming the house. I'm making sure it's meticulously clean because it's filthy and we're having guests over.
Language,
I know that's because your wife is going to appreciate it.
That's right.
I'll do the same thing, right?
That's right. And the hard thing for guys is when we fulfill the love language, we're tempted to point it out.
Yeah, don't point it out. It's a really bad idea.
But
just
when you fulfill your partner's love language, it builds your relationship like nothing else. So learn his or hers and fulfill it every single day.
Yes, it makes the other person feel loved when you speak their language. Just like speaking someone's language in English or whatever, French, they feel understood. All right, we are now on to number 8, which is fix things before they become disastrous. So that's
weed the garden.
Yeah, the metaphor here is weed the garden. Relationships are gardens, and every garden gets weeds. And if you do not pluck out the weeds, pull out the weeds, kill the weeds will overtake the flowers and the other pretty stuff.
That's it. If you're in a long-term relationship, and Chris is, and I am with my wife, we've been married. By the time this goes to air, it'll be almost 36 years.
Holy moly.
I know. I still call her my current wife, just to keep her on her toes. But we weed the garden. Like, we recognize things will build up. Things will be annoying between you. Be honest about it. Bring it in the open. Pull those freaking weeds.
Conversation is essential here. You have to be willing to admit to faults, to talk about what you want, and to be honest about things and say, hey, I did not realize that you didn't like that. Tell me more about that.
And when you talk, watch out for the triggers that'll set the person off. Recognize it's vitally important to weed the garden and generate light instead of heat. So when you discuss things, keep it in the realm of turning the lights on a situation rather than ramping things up. Remember, there's 3 levels of argumentation. The first one is pure data, and that's the one you want to deal with this stuff. with. If you get to level 2, you start to get adrenaline cycles, stress chemicals,
into it.
And now it starts to get harder. By the time you get to level 3, adrenaline-drenched argumentation, now you got to take a break. It's crazy. So, and that's what leads to the next one, number 9, if you're not careful, which is don't drop the atomic bomb. I heard a speaker say this once at a conference, and it was great information. The atomic bomb is different in every relationship.
Oh, yeah. The atomic bomb could just be a phrase like, I am done with you.
Yes, and which hurts the other person to the quick. Or it could be bringing up some old flaw that the person did, some horrible thing they did 10, 15 years ago, unpacking that again and saying, you did this, you don't want to drop the bomb. You know what the bomb is in your own relationship. And the way to keep the relationship strong is don't drop the bomb. To make a frickin' point, use some self-control, be an adult, and hold back with the nuclear weapons. You don't need the nuclear weapons.
The bomb takes out the weeds and the stuff that
and the relationship.
It's everything. The bomb just destroys the entire garden. You want what's the metaphor here? You want to selectively spray the weeds, man.
Yeah, that's right. Rip the weeds out.
What you want.
Rip the weeds out. Don't hurt the flowers.
Exactly.
I'm so great with metaphor. Did you hear that?
That's a really nice
one.
Now,
number 10 is learn to let things go. Forgive and choose to forget. You choose to forgive initially. It's a choice. It's a decision. It's not a feeling. The feelings follow later, folks, and they follow because of sound neuroscience. When you have something that sets you off. I had a friend years ago, actually he's not really a friend anymore because, as you know, I don't hang around people who are toxic or they're dicks. And this guy was securely in the latter camp. And he was going out with a new girl. He wound up marrying her. They eventually divorced. But when they were going out together, he knew she'd been with a couple of other guys. And if he'd talk about it, it stressed him so much. His upper lip would go all rigid and weird, and he could hardly talk.
Oh, weird, yeah.
So he had difficulty forgiving her for something that was before he even knew her.
Oh, man.
Which is ridiculous.
That's absolutely ridiculous.
Why didn't you save yourself for me, even though you didn't know I existed? So the point is, forgiveness is a choice. It's a decision. It is often an ongoing decision and is key to our navigator system, one of our products, to making it work properly. Forgive, forgive, forgive consistently. The neuroscience will follow. The old neural pathways will become pruned and fall away, and eventually it won't bother you anymore. You'll begin to forget. If you continuously forgive, let go of stuff.
Hint, hint, if you go to MikeMandelHypnosis.com/shirt and pick up a brain software shirt, the digital bundle might not include the navigator system,
but
or maybe it does. You'll have to find out.
Product.
I don't think I would have brought this up if it didn't.
Okay, go to 11 here, Chris.
But before we do go to 11, I also want to mention that forgiveness, this whole idea of forgiveness. So I love this metaphor
forgive you for interrupting.
that you have given in the past, which says forgiveness would be like saying, I can forgive the lion for mauling me, but that doesn't mean I have to be stupid and get back in.
Forgiveness in no way means that you are condoning the action.
Right.
So when I would deal with people who'd suffered abuse in my private practice in the 1990s, when I would explain forgiveness, they think that it was somehow, they'd often make the point that it was somehow saying, it was okay what they did. I forgive you. It's not that.
It's okay.
So I sometimes would change the word to release them. Not forgive, release them. In other words, let go of it. You don't have to hang out with them anymore. But unforgiveness is drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die.
The reason I brought this up, though, is
Did you hear that one?
Yes, I heard that one. That's a great one, by the way.
It's my wife.
Rewind, listen to that again, folks, if you missed it. But so forgiveness doesn't mean you have to hang out with them anymore.
No.
But in the case of an intimate relationship, you're choosing to stay with your spouse, let's say, for some mistake
significant
that
other,
made. You're forgiving because you have to fundamentally be able to say to yourself, I believe that this person is not out to hurt me.
Yeah,
now,
that's right.
If a lion doesn't know any better, that's its instinct. It will hurt you, right? If your wife or your husband or whatever, if you can genuinely say, they are not out to hurt me, then you should be able to say, I choose to forgive.
Choose to forgive, yeah.
If you can't, then you have a totally different problem.
Right. And we don't want to invalidate people. You don't want to say, oh, you're stupid. Don't invalidate people. Deal with the issue. Don't attack the other person. Sometimes it takes practice.
All right, we've got 3 more here, Mike.
Okay, go ahead.
So we've got Beware of the Zombies.
Yes.
Actually, this one was in our very first podcast, the beta podcast from years ago, which was about relationships, and you talked about zombie arguments.
Zombie arguments.
But since it's been years and years,
let's bring it back. Zombie arguments are arguments.
Since it's been years and years, let's bring it back.
Let's bring the pecker back.
Let's bring the
zombie arguments are arguments that keep rising from the dead, and they're only brought back from the dead when someone raises them.
I thought this was dead. We talked about it years ago on the podcast.
Well,
why are we talking
the
about it
freaking
again,
zombies
Mike?
are back, buddy. Get a shotgun and Remington 870,
so
blow their
let's
heads
say
off.
that you have agreed that...
Let's say you have a discussion with your significant other and something is talked out and is over. Neither of you now have any right, when you have both agreed that it is over, to resurrect the zombie and let it start bringing mayhem in your life again just because you're pissed off one day. Well, what about that thing you did? Like, you stupid cock.
Just pick something stupid, like you used to make the coffee way too strong.
No, it would typically be something
No, I'm making a stupid joke.
Well, okay.
I'm making a hilarious joke.
It is stupid, though, yeah.
Your wife had this hilariously bad reaction to the fact that you used to make the coffee horribly strong, and you have agreed that you won't do that anymore. And now she brings up this every
that's a zombie
6
argument.
months.
But it would be something way worse than that.
Yes.
The point is, leave the zombies dead. Make an agreement. I've told some couples, I actually have a zombie death certificate.
Yeah.
And I had them pre-signed. I'd say, here's the things. When you both agree it is over forever, sign this. Put the argument on and sign it. And then it never comes up again. There's no purpose in it.
And
let
in
the
all
zombies stay dead.
It has to be something that would be meaningful to the other person.
Of
so
course.
if it was you did not show up for your son's first T-ball game and you said you were going to be there and the whole family was
you're
expecting
neglectful and awful.
Boom, all of a sudden you're a horrible
devalued.
dad and you said, you're right, I made a stupid decision. My boss expected this from me and I should have had the strength to say, no, I'm really sorry. It'll never happen again. Boom. Death certificate signed, right? You don't want that coming up.
No, you do not want that coming up.
And that might seem like a nothing issue to some people, but to other people, that'd be a huge issue to fight about, right?
At all, do we?
All right. Next.
Number 12.
Number
Learn
12.
to zip up your mouth. This is one that Chris and I both have had to work on because we think quickly and the temptation to jump in with what we think the person is saying or the point they're making, it's a very, very bad thing. And to be fair, Chris was much worse with this than I ever was. Sorry, but you got to listen intently. You know, Milton Erickson, the greatest hypnotist who ever lived, he listened with riveted attention. He listened, he gave you his entire being as you spoke. And it had a profound effect on the exchange of information. Listen without interrupting. Zip up your mouth. Nod as the person's talking. Actively listen.
Don't give the person a chance to apologize for having the middle of your sentence interrupt the beginning of theirs.
Wow. It's profound in a strange sort of irritating way.
I love that line.
Okay, take us to the final one, Chris.
All right, number 13, Baker's Dozen, last one on the list. Remember, people like people. This is so important. Pay attention. People like people who make other people feel good about themselves.
Right.
Is that worded correctly?
Yes, it is.
People like people.
People like those people who make other people feel good about themselves. So in other words,
presence,
in their presence. So if I'm hanging out with someone, it's not how much they like me that matters. It's how much they feel good about themselves around me. That's what makes them like me.
People like people who make themselves
If you recognize the more you make other people feel good about themselves, the more they will like you. Not good about you. That's the part people miss.
That often a part of it.
Right.
But it's not the causal connection.
It's not the causal connection.
Right.
Make people feel good about who they are. But I'm certainly not talking about, flattery and just saying, oh, your hair looks great. Oh, your dress looks great. Oh,
it can be the simple matter that you have fun together.
Yes.
And when so if you know somebody's values hierarchy.
Right.
And let's say their values hierarchy, like Mike, is security.
Security.
So,
well, one of them is.
If you carry around a lot of weapons and stuff, then they feel...
It's making me sound like a psycho here.
I'm just kidding around. Let's say their top value is
adventure.
So
and you make their life so exciting and so much fun, and they're feeling good about themselves under those conditions, they will like you as well. Remember, make them feel good about themselves in your presence. Which brings us, Chris, to your empowering question for today.
All right, here we go. Which of these hacks are you going to immediately apply to your relationships, and what results do you expect? Which of these hacks are you going to immediately apply to your relationships, and what results do you expect?
Fantastic, buddy. Really good. I want to tell you my metaphor for today, and it's an odd one. Years ago, when I was in the 1990s, I was studying martial arts. I was studying Wugar Mosat, which is a very unusual martial art. It means Fu family of martial arts. And I was studying with Gary Fu, the founder. Friend of mine, former policeman, really smart guy, really successful, funny as heck. But I got him with a number of hilarious practical jokes over the years. And one of them was I could get him to react to things like, I said to him once, do you know Bruce Lee was so fast? I said, you know when you tear off a piece of toilet paper, sometimes there's a little triangle piece left? He said, yeah. I said, Bruce Lee was so fast, he could rip off a sheet of toilet paper and not leave the little triangle tag. And Gary says, well, I can do that too. Like, it just immediately takes the bait. And
like it's such a meaningful thing.
It's such a meaningful thing. But he was hilarious for that kind of stuff. He would take the bait all the time. And I remember that one of the greatest practical jokes I ever did was on him. I went to Philosopher and Warrior, which was the school I studied with. He was out of the room. I got on his computer and into Microsoft Word, and I changed the autocorrect. So every time he put in a really common word like than, T-H-A-N, it would autocorrect it in like a huge font in bright red to, you have a virus, multiple exclamation marks. And I forgot about it. So, of course, it was several days later or weeks. He's on the computer typing a document, uses than eventually, and boom, you have a virus on the screen. He freaks out, runs antivirus, doesn't find anything, downloads new antivirus, doesn't find anything, thinks, okay, there mustn't be anything there, goes back to the document, you have a virus, freaks out, gets his father-in-law from the Royal Bank who did computer stuff for the Royal Bank of Canada, and they work on it till like 2 a.m. trying to desperately find this thing in the system. Okay, but the best one of all, Chris, was Gary Fu really liked the musical artist Seal. Remember he did that song, Kissed by a Rose on the Grey, and it was a beautiful song. In fact, it's one of those flawless songs that nobody else will ever be able to do. Multiple layers of production on it.
It's a complex
phenomenal voice, but really interesting. Well, I used to, because I knew Gary loved it, I would just sing it. And it's not a song you can just sing. It has to be done with all the instrumentation or whatever, or it sounds like absolute crap. And I would just sing it randomly. And when there's a part in it where he says the word baby, I would get the word wrong. And I'd see Gary flinch. Instead of saying baby, I said freak out. And I just see him flinch across the room. I keep singing freak out instead of saying baby. And he comes over to me and he says, it's not freak out. I went, what? He said, the words of that song, it's not freak out, it's baby. I went, what do you mean? He said, it's not freak out, it's baby. I went, oh, I see. So a couple of days later, I'd see him again, and I'd start singing it again. And I could see him on edge, like sort of half listening. And I'd change it. Now, instead of singing freak out, I sang break out, as though I'd corrected it to break out. And I'd sing it really loud and annoyingly. And he said, it's not break out. I said, what? He said, it's baby. I went, oh, I see. It was so entertaining, just reeling him in every time.
That's really awesome. Oh, thanks everybody for listening. This has been Brain Software, episode 88, because it's 100 minus 12, 100 minus a dozen. And we hope you enjoyed this one. I want to leave you with a final reminder, which is to head on over to MikeMandelHypnosis.com/shirt, because that is where you can buy a Brain Software shirt from our Teespring campaign. And when you send us your proof of purchase, you get $100 of awesome digital training from MikeMandelHypnosis.com. MikeMandelHypnosis.com/shirt. All the details and the designs are there.
Awesome. See you soon. There used to be a great tower alone on the sea. You became the light on the dark side of me. Love remained a drug that's the high of the pill.
Did you know
when it snows, my eyes become large and the light that you shine can be seen. Break out! I compare you to a kiss from a rose on the gray. Ooh, the more I get of you, the stranger it feels, yeah. Now that your rose is in bloom, a light hits the gloom on the gray. There is so much a man can tell you, so much he can say. You remain my power, my pleasure, my pain. Break out. To me, you're like a growing addiction that I can't deny. Won't you tell me, is that healthy, babe? Did you know that when it snows, my eyes become large and the light that you shine can be seen? Freak out! Oh, you know you're gonna freak out one day with me. Break out!
If you had ever told me we were going to do stupid karaoke on the podcast, I would say
oh, man, that's my finest work. Okay, yeah. Let's put on some real music. Good night!